It's Wednesday.
Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome back to my Saturday Hodgepodge, my weekly wrap-up of all things books, booktube, bookish stuff, anything I want to talk about. It is a Wednesday and not Saturday and not Friday, the day I normally film my Saturday Hodgepodges, but I'm going to be out of town until today, probably. I think I'm coming back from my daughter's brand new home they just bought, helping to move them in and get things arranged and painted. That's what I'm doing starting today, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, probably, but I wasn't sure I'd be able to be back, so I thought I would just do a real quick Saturday Hodgepodge at this point in the video. So I'm going to start off by, shameless self-promotion with about a minute and a half of promo for my Patreon channel. Is the camera crooked? Okay, so let's do a real quick wrap-up on the books that I read this month. This is my May wrap-up. I had a really good month of May. I think I read, 8, 9 books, depending on how you want to count it. It helped that a lot of the books I read were less than 300 pages or kind of right at that 300-page mark, or many of them were actually quite a bit shorter. So the first book I read was Fire Rush by Jacqueline Crooks. I have a full review video about Fire Rush along with Boulder, another book I'll talk about here in just a minute, so I won't leave a lot of in-depth thoughts about this because, like I said, I've already talked about the book. I thought the book was great. I thought Yamaya, the main character in the book, who is of Jamaican descent, living in England in the London area, and her struggles against racism, against past family problems, against sexism, against oppression by the police, and how her story really is woven in with elements of Jamaican culture and language, and most importantly music. I thought it was really, really well done. There is a kind of a thriller element to it, which is not, completely unpredictable. To me, all the other parts of the story really made it that much better. Also, I don't know if you knew this or not, but May was Misery May, hosted by Gemma of Jump Books and Scott from Gunpowder Fiction and Plot. And the book we were supposed to read for Misery May was Thomas Hardy's Jude the Obscure. If you watch my channel, you know how much I dislike Thomas Hardy's works. I didn't know Thomas Hardy, so I don't dislike him personally. But I decided to take this on and do a reread of Jude the Obscure, which I listened to as an audiobook via the LibriVox app. And there was a good audiobook narrator for the version I listened to, and so I listened to it. I will say that having listened to the book and having read it once a long time ago in the past, my appreciation for what Hardy is capable of doing as a writer was greatly advanced by this. And I may read other Hardy novels just to see, if I'm really this much of a Hardy hater or not. But despite the qualities of the writing and those kind of things, I really thought that the novel was, as I believed, unnecessarily bleak, pretty heavy-handed, and the plot really kind of irritated me with a will they, won't they, are they not kind of element to the plot, which takes up a lot of the middle of the book. But great group on Voxer. Really enjoyed that discussion, listening to everybody's thoughts about it. But I did read that, listen to that. I also read another book which I think qualifies for Misery May, even though I didn't know it would, and that's Human Acts by Kang, the South Korean author, more famous for The Vegetarian and other works. I was able to get this on my Kindle, so I got a really cheap copy of this. And this book centers on the South Korean dictatorship of the mid 20th century's repression of kind of labor rights movement and a youth student movement for greater democracy and greater freedoms, and the brutal way in which that was crushed in one particular town and province in South Korea. And it's really inventively told through the perspective of these group of characters who know one another, and it's kind of like the story is picked up and carried on by one character after another, but it's not linear. I really thought it was really good, but it's definitely miserable in terms of its content. The book is, like I said, really good. I read my second book by the Rwandan author Scholastige Mukasanga. Somehow I've read 2 of her books and not read the ones that are most critically acclaimed, but I read Kibogo. This is kind of like a modern day book of folk tales, I guess, which really, I think primarily she wrote to kind of focus on the impact that colonialism has on the people of Africa, the people of Rwanda here, and how it destroys their culture and how it warps their society, and how it changes lots of things about them. I really thought it was inventive and clever and good and pleasant. Not the greatest book I've ever read, but I thought it was good. A book which I really enjoyed a great deal was Boulder by Eva Baltasar, translated from the Catalan, I believe, by Julius Sanches. This book, which I also reviewed in the same video which I reviewed Fire Rush, this book also really just kind of blew me away. I have a full review, like I said, so I won't go into a lot of detail, but I will say its main character, despite the fact that she's a lesbian woman, is a character that I identified with in lots of ways. Not completely, of course, hopefully I'm not quite as extreme as the character is, but there are lots of things in here that I did identify with, and I was surprised. And the writing itself is this kind of really, I think, effective, kind of stripped down type of prose, which I really liked. I also read Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. It's a recommendation from Scott, Gunpowder Fiction Plot, and this involves a young woman who is kind of growing up and knows that there is something about her or her family that are different. The things about her that are unacknowledged by her family and which she doesn't find out about until later really cause her problems in her life and her relationships. And it starts off being incredibly funny, and it then becomes more and more serious. And I don't mean serious in a way which bogs you down. There's still kind of a certain lightness in the description and discussion, but it really was an effective and fun and enjoyable read. I believe it's Meg Mason's only book. If she had others, I would definitely read them. As a change of pace, I read All Systems Red by Martha Wells, the first book in the Murderbot series of books, and it was just exactly what everybody told me. It was a really engaging, fun sci-fi novel about, I'm going to say, some kind of, I don't know, cyborg, part human, part computer/mechanical parts, whose job it is to kind of act as a security guard, whose specialty is in violence, and is equipped with all kinds of weapons. But Murderbot, that's what the thing calls itself. Murderbot is, incredibly human in lots of ways. It's figured out a way to kind of hack its own system so it can watch essentially trash TV while it's supposed to be working, and prevent its controllers and the people who send it information from knowing what it's doing. And that gets it into trouble, but that also makes the character incredibly charming. Let's see. After that, I also read Women Talking by Miriam Toews. I finally got around to reading my first Miriam Toews novel, and I will say that I am impressed by that book. The parts in which, if you don't know, the book centers on, is kind of a fictionalized version of a real-life event where a group of Mennonite women found out that the men in their community, they lived in a colony, a commune if you will, in Bolivia, that the men in their community were drugging them in their sleep and then raping them. And they only figured this out because, bruising and other kinds of things that indicated to them that they were being sexually assaulted. At first, the leader of the group says, "Oh, it was demons and evil, and you brought this on yourself." And then they find out what was actually happening. And so what happens is this group of women gathers in a hayloft in a barn and discuss what they should do, and they essentially come up with the idea of doing nothing, which some of the women in the community choose to do, but the group of women who are talking in this decide either to leave or they have to leave, stay and fight, or stay and forgive the men who've done these things in order to stay in their community. And the discussion, the dynamics between that group is just, I thought, brilliant. They are multi-generational, young, middle-aged, old. Some of them don't like one another. Some of them have issues outside that kind of influence what their decision making is. They fight, they argue, they talk, they snipe at one another. But when there is a crisis, they all come together, pull together, and you can see that kind of community. And I thought all of that was brilliant. I didn't care for the only male character, since the women in Women Talking are illiterate in the sense they can't read and write. They have this man who is kind of a teacher in their community and somewhat of an outcast among the male population of their colony, come and transcribe and take notes. He adds things, he answers questions, and we see the story through his eyes. And I felt like his character got too much attention. I wasn't nearly as interested in him and his issues and his problems, even though Toews, gives him a backstory and a reason why he's an outcast and those kind of things. But that wasn't the part of the story that I thought was best. And so I was a little, I subtract a little bit from the quality of the book for that emphasis, or what I felt like was unnecessary emphasis on this character. I also read Femme by Magda Karnecki, translated from Romanian by Seth Cotter. This is a story in which a woman, and I've talked about this before, a woman is telling stories to her lover, to her husband, about herself, her past, who she is, how she sees the world, how she sees herself relating to the world, and the prose and the writing and the descriptions are beautiful and intense, and their themes and images which repeat throughout, and it can be kind of overwhelming, and it can be kind of it was hard for me to always stay grounded in the difference between reality and dream, but it was a great reading experience. I really liked it. I saw Mark Nash review the book, and that's why I bought it. He thought it was great. He liked it a little better than I did. That happens all the time, but I really thought it was a worthwhile read, and I enjoyed reading it. I also was able to get Foster from the Libby app and check that out through my library app. Foster is the second book by Claire Keegan that I've read. I read and loved Small Things Like These last year, and I read Foster, and it is a almost flawless gem of a tiny little novella. I don't think there is a word, a comma, a period out of place. It is, to me, note perfect, and increasingly you can tell in this wrap-up that I've been reading a lot of shorter books. Increasingly, I am looking for that kind of condensed perfection, where things are not all said, in which we as readers kind of get to figure it out, and feel the emotions without them being explained to us. I thought it was just beautiful. I think it's only about 50 or 60 pages. If you haven't read it, you could read it in an hour. Most of you, I'm a slow reader. And it is nearly perfect, I think. I just was so swept up in the writing and the images and the characters and the emotion. Just truly great. And then I started reading Tomb of Sand, which I believe was an International Booker Award winner last year. Tomb of Sand by Geetanjali Shree, translated from the Hindi by Sarah Rockwell, I believe. I started reading that. I'm about halfway through, and it is really overwhelming. The first section I found to be kind of overwhelming, the amount of detail and characters and the richness of the description of kind of the modern day Indian society and this family, and keeping track of who all the family members were, and their relationship to the main character, who is kind of the grandmother character so far, and I believe will be throughout the book. And the plot seemed to be kind of lost in all the detail and things, but in the second section, you kind of feel the plot coming together, and it becomes more linear. And it's no less enjoyable for being linear than it was for being kind of all over the place. But I'm not finished with that. Like I said, I got about half of it to go. I will not finish in May because I'll be driving later today, which is the last day of May. So I'll finish that up in June. Anyway, there you go. There is my wrap up for this week. I'm going to go ahead and leave you with a little short vlog package that I took from a trip that I made during a trip my wife and I took to visit my daughter and her husband a few weeks ago. Just put together a little vlog package. Here that is. Anyway, there you go. There is my probably pretty quick or maybe pretty long Saturday Hodgepodge for this week. I look forward to your comments in the comment section below. As always, thank you for watching.